I'd never imagined discovering that the woman sleeping beside me for 12 years had calculated my death down to the minute. My name is Aaron Simpsons, and I'm 38 years old. Each morning now starts with coffee at my kitchen counter, watching shadows stretch across unfamiliar walls. My daughter, Ariane, only 9 and still innocent, doesn't understand why we moved so suddenly. Detective Miguel Ortiz, the undercover officer who posed as the hitman my wife Karine tried to hire, warned me that betrayal changes everything. Your home, your memories, your ability to trust. My wedding photo sits face down in a drawer. My fingers still trace its frame sometimes, searching for when the lies began. But I won't let her destroy what matters. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I don't think anyone ever expects their life to shatter on an ordinary Thursday night. Mine did at precisely 12:17 a.m., while I was staring at the ceiling fan making its slow circles above our bed. Dinner earlier that evening had gone the way most of our meals went lately. Tense. I'd found another unexplained withdrawal in our joint account, $600 this time, and Karen had dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. "It's for Ariane's science camp deposit," she'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. You know how they fill up fast. But I knew science camp was only $300 and I'd already paid that deposit back in February. When I mentioned this fact, her smile had tightened at the corners. "God, Aaron, do you have to question every little thing? Maybe I want to have a little spending money without a full interrogation for once." I'd let it drop. That was our pattern lately. I'd notice something off. She'd get defensive and I'd back away. 12 years of marriage taught me which battles were worth fighting. At least, that's what I told myself as I watched her scroll through her phone, seemingly unbothered by the tension hanging between us. The phone on my nightstand vibrated just after midnight, the screen lighting up with no caller ID. Most people would ignore a blocked call that late, but something made me answer. Maybe it was the restlessness. Maybe it was fate. "Hello?" I kept my voice low. Beside me, Karine's breathing remained deep and even. "Is this Aaron Simpsons?" A man's voice, steady and controlled. "Who's asking?" "My name is Detective Miguel Ortiz with the County Police Department." He paused. "I need to speak with you about a sensitive matter. Privately." My chest tightened. "Is Ariane okay?" Our daughter was at her first overnight school trip, 3 hours away at the State Science Center. "Your daughter's fine, Mr. Simpsons. This is about your wife." I slipped out of bed and moved to the hallway, closing the bedroom door softly behind me. "What about her?" "I'm working undercover on a murder-for-hire investigation." His words came carefully measured. "I believe your wife has attempted to hire me to kill you." The hallway tilted. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself, certain I'd misheard. "That's not possible." "I wish I was wrong." His voice remained professional but with an edge of genuine concern. "She approached me through an encrypted messaging app 4 days ago. We've met twice. She's provided your daily schedule, photographs of you, and a down payment of $5,000. I sank down against the wall, my legs suddenly useless. The family photos lining our hallway seemed to be watching me. Vacation snapshots, Ariane's school portraits, our wedding picture. Karine in white, her smile radiant as she looked up at me. "Mr. Simpsons, are you still there?" "Why would she—" My voice cracked. "We have a daughter." She mentioned a life insurance policy. $750,000. The policy. The one she'd insisted we both get last year after her friend's husband died suddenly of a heart attack. "For peace of mind," she'd said. I'd never questioned it. "I need to meet with you," Detective Ortiz continued. "Tomorrow morning. Somewhere she won't see us. Do you know Mill Creek Feed Store on County Road 16? Behind it, there's a gravel lot." My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. 8:30? "I'll be in an unmarked car." "I'll be there." When I returned to our bedroom, Karine was still asleep, her face peaceful. I stood there watching her breathe, this woman who had held my hand through my father's funeral, who had screamed and laughed and cried when our daughter was born. This woman who had apparently priced my death at $750,000. I didn't sleep. How could I? I lay there remembering every late meeting she'd had recently. Every time she mentioned investment opportunities with people whose names I never quite caught. Every withdrawal that came with a different explanation. Morning light eventually filtered through the blinds, making everything look normal. Routine. Kareen's alarm went off at 6, and she showered while I made coffee I couldn't taste. When she came down in her work clothes, hair still damp, her wedding ring caught the light as she reached for her mug. "You're up early," she noted, stirring cream into her coffee. "Got a maintenance job. Commercial building downtown." The lie came easily, which scared me almost as much as everything else. "Will you be late? Should I pick up something for dinner?" So casual, like she wasn't planning my funeral. "Don't worry about it. I'll text you." I kissed her cheek automatically the way I had thousands of mornings before. Her skin felt the same. How was that possible? The 20-minute drive to Mill Creek feed store felt like crossing an ocean. Every stoplight, every turn, every breath seemed significant. This was the last day of my life as I knew it. I pulled into the gravel lot behind the feed store at 8:27, parking my truck beside the dumpsters where it wouldn't be easily spotted from the road. An unmarked sedan, navy blue with government plates, sat in the far corner. As I cut the engine, a man stepped out of the car. Average height, solid build, with the steady composure of someone who's seen the worst of humanity and somehow stayed standing. Under his arm was a manila folder with red block letters. Evidence. Detective Ortiz nodded once, acknowledging me before gesturing toward his car. "Better if we talk inside." His voice was low, controlled, the voice of someone who delivered life-altering news for a living. I slid into the passenger seat, the vinyl cool against my back despite the morning heat. The car smelled of coffee and something antiseptic. Official. "I understand this is difficult," Ortiz said, settling behind the wheel. "But I need you to see everything." He opened the manila folder across his lap. The first photo showed Kareen in the corner booth at Lakeview Cafe, a spot we used to call our place when we were dating. Her hair was pulled back in that sleek ponytail she wore for important meetings. Across from her sat Ortiz in plain clothes, looking nothing like the detective beside me now. Different glasses, different posture. My stomach knotted. When was this? 4 days ago, first meeting. He flipped to another photo, Kareen handing over an envelope in what looked like a parking garage. This was yesterday. $5,000 down payment. I couldn't breathe right. The photos kept coming. Kareen writing something. Kareen nodding. Kareen smiling that half smile she used when closing deals at her real estate office. Then Ortiz pulled out a sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve. She provided this. It was my schedule. My goddamn schedule. Written in Kareen's neat handwriting, 6:15 a.m., morning run, MWF, always alone. 7:30 a.m., breakfast with daughter, 8:15 a.m., leaves for job sites. Park bench on east side of Henderson Lake. Runs there every Friday, sits to retie shoes at mile 3. Reading my life laid out as a murder plan made me gag. I rolled down the window, gulping fresh air. "There's audio," Ortiz said quietly. "You don't have to listen. Play it." My voice sounded hollow. He tapped his phone, and Kareen's voice filled the car, unmistakable in its clarity. "So we're agreed. 5 now, the rest when it's done. Don't make it look suspicious. Accident or robbery. I need the insurance to process quickly." Ortiz's undercover voice. "What about your daughter? You sure about this?" A pause. Then Kareen, cooler than I'd ever heard her. "She'll have me. And financial security. That's more than we have now." He stopped the recording. I stared at my hands, which wouldn't stop trembling. "We have enough to arrest her," Ortiz said. "But for the strongest case, we need to prove intent beyond any reasonable doubt. That means completing the operation, staging your death, documenting her response when she thinks you're gone, and recording her final payment." I looked up sharply. "You want me to disappear? What about my daughter?" "Just for a day or 2. We move fast once we have the final evidence." His eyes held mine steadily. "I know this is a lot. But if we don't do this right, there's always a chance she walks. What if—" I had to force the words out. "What if there's some explanation? A misunderstanding?" Ortiz's expression softened slightly. No husband wants to believe it, but this one is real, Mr. Simpsons. I've been doing this 15 years. She's not being coerced. She's not mentally impaired. She wants you dead for the money, plain and simple. I drove home in a daze, missing turns, running a stop sign. The world looked different, sharper, more threatening. By the time I pulled into our driveway, dusk was settling over the neighborhood. The porch light was on, warm yellow against the growing darkness. The front door burst open before I could reach it. Ariane flew down the steps, her small body colliding with mine in a fierce hug. "Daddy, you're late. We're having spaghetti and Mom said I could have extra cheese if I finished my science homework." I held her tight, breathing in the strawberry shampoo smell of her hair. This was real. This little person who trusted me completely. Whatever happened next, I had to protect her. Inside, Karine stood at the stove, stirring pasta sauce. She smiled when she saw me, the same smile from our wedding photos, from birthday celebrations, from ordinary Tuesdays across 12 years. "There you are," she said lightly. "Busy day?" I studied her face as I answered something vague about HVAC failures. Did her eyes flicker when she looked at me? Was that guilt in the way she busied herself with dinner preparations? Or was it just normal distraction? Throughout dinner, Ariane chattered about school while Karine asked cheerful questions. I watched my wife laugh at our daughter's jokes, touching her hand affectionately. How could those same fingers have written down the best place to kill me? "Aaron, are you feeling okay?" Karine's brow furrowed with what looked like genuine concern. "Headache," I mumbled. "Think I'll check that filter replacement I ordered for the Morgan's job." I escaped to the garage, closing the door behind me. Standing among my tools, wrenches aligned by size, manuals stacked neatly on shelves, I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of my workbench. "She really did it," I whispered to the empty space. My reflection stared back at me from the window of Karine's car. A man whose wife wanted him dead. When I walked back into the house, Ariane was already in her pajamas watching her allotted half-hour of TV before bed. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in that strawberry scent one more time. "Good night, Bug. Don't stay up too late." "I'm watching till the end, Dad." She didn't look away from the screen where cartoon characters were solving some impossibly simple problem. In the kitchen, Karine was uncorking a bottle of wine. Not just any wine, the same Merlot we'd splurged on for our 10th anniversary, the one we'd agreed to save for special occasions. My stomach twisted. "Want a glass?" she asked, her voice casual. "Thought we could unwind a bit." I nodded, watching her practiced pour. Had she planned this moment, this particular wine, for a reason? Was tonight special because she thought it might be one of my last? "You've been quiet," she said, sliding the glass toward me. "Bad day at the Morgan's place?" I took a deliberate sip. "Not really. Just thinking about money." Her smile flickered. "What about it?" "Those new withdrawals from the joint account. And that trip you're planning to see your sister next month." I kept my voice even. "It's adding up fast." Karine laughed, the sound a little too bright. "God, Aaron, you always worry too much about money." "We're fine. Better than fine, actually." "Better how?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Just, things are looking up. My networking is paying off." I nodded slowly. "Speaking of paying, a detective approached me today, Ortiz. Said it was something serious." The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Just for a second, so brief I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching for it. Then she took a slow sip. "A detective? What about?" "He says someone's been making payments, large ones." She set her glass down, a small laugh escaping her. "And what? He thinks it's me? That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Karine's eyes met mine, challenging. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Aaron?" I could almost hear Miguel's voice. Get her to admit intent. I took a breath. "He has evidence, Karine. Photos, recordings. You hiring someone to kill me." Something shifted behind her eyes, something cold and calculating. The mask slipped just enough. "You always were dramatic, Aaron." Her voice had an edge now. "What now? Another lecture about trust? You want me to clap while you pretend you're the victim?" "You hired someone to murder me," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. "Say you didn't." She leaned in, eyes flat as river stones. "If I wanted you gone, Aaron, you'd be gone. But sure, tell your little story. Who's going to believe the man who forgets anniversaries and shows up greasy to school concerts?" The certainty in her voice made my skin crawl. This wasn't denial. This was contempt. For me. For the very idea that I might outsmart her. "You're going to hear this back on the recording someday," I told her, my heart hammering. "I believe me. And that's enough to start." She stood up, chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not entertaining this paranoia anymore. You need help, Aaron. Real help." She gathered her wine glass and the bottle. "When you're ready to apologize, I'll be upstairs. Until then, enjoy your little detective fantasy." I sat alone at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, listening to the house sounds, Ariane's show ending, Karin's footsteps overhead, the pipes groaning as she showered. I remembered installing that new water heater myself last winter, Karin bringing me coffee saying we made a good team. At midnight I checked the upstairs bedroom. Karin was asleep or pretending to be, her breathing steady. I retreated to the living room, pulled out my phone, and texted Miguel one word. "In." The next morning, sunlight cut across the table where our half-finished glasses still sat. Mine barely touched, hers drained. Like everything else between us, the wine had served its purpose for her and was discarded. I packed a small duffel with essentials, told Karin I had emergency overtime work, and kissed Ariane goodbye. As I closed the front door behind me, I knew with absolute certainty I wouldn't sleep in that house again. 2 days felt like 2 years. I crashed on Nate's sofa the first night, then moved to a police-arranged motel room the second. The walls were thin, and I could hear the couple next door arguing about laundry. Normal problems. My problem? My wife wanted me dead. Miguel picked me up at 6:30 in the morning. His unmarked sedan smelled like coffee and gun oil. "You look like hell," he said, pulling away from the curb. "Appreciate the honesty." He drove us to a nondescript building on the edge of town, the kind of place you pass every day without noticing. Inside, a tactical team waited in a conference room. 4 officers plus Miguel, 5 people planning my fake murder. "Mr. Simpsons," a woman with steel gray hair nodded. "I'm Lieutenant Reyes, let's get you briefed." Miguel spread a manila folder across the table. "Here's how it works. We stage a murder scene at your regular running spot, the park bench at the 3-mile mark where Karin told me you always stop to tie your shoe." My stomach twisted. How many times had she watched me do that, planning? "We'll use synthetic blood professionally applied," Miguel continued. "We'll take photos from multiple angles. Your wallet will be there, appearing partially searched. We'll create an internal police report that won't go public but will exist in the system if she or someone else checks." Lieutenant Reyes leaned forward. "You'll be completely off-grid during this operation." "Your friend, Nate," I supplied. "Mr. Harper has agreed to house you temporarily. We've vetted him thoroughly." I almost smiled. Nate Harper was the most straightforward man I knew. The background check probably took all of 5 minutes. "What about Ariane?" My voice cracked. 9 years old and caught in this nightmare. Miguel's expression softened. "We've consulted with Child Protective Services. Their recommendation is to maintain her routine as much as possible. For now, she believes you're working. After we arrest Karin, we'll bring in a counselor to help explain things to your daughter." I remembered the way Ariane had hugged me goodbye yesterday, completely unaware that her mother had priced my life at less than a luxury SUV. "Sign here," Reyes pushed forms toward me. "Limited cooperation agreement. Outlines what we need from you and what protections we provide." I scanned the documents, seeing phrases like "assumes no liability" and "voluntary participation." My hand was steady as I signed each page. Miguel walked me through the timeline 3 times until I had it memorized. Dawn tomorrow, stage the scene. Midday, anonymous tip to local police. Evening, Miguel calls Karin with news of the hit. After that, he said, we wait for her to make the remaining payment and file for the insurance. Then we move. The tactical team dispersed, leaving me with a folder of documents I couldn't take with me and instructions I couldn't write down. Miguel drove me to Nate's apartment building. "Last chance to back out," he said as we idled in the parking lot. I looked at him. She didn't give me a last chance. Why should I give her one? That evening, I called home. Karine answered on the fourth ring. "Hey," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "Emergency job in Colombia, water damage at a medical center. Could be 2-3 days." "Whatever," she replied. I could hear her typing something. "Just let me know when you're back. Can I talk to Ariane?" A pause. Then my daughter's voice filled the line. "Daddy, are you fixing a big problem?" "The biggest," I said, closing my eyes. "Be good for Mom, okay? I love you more than anything." "Love you too. Bring me back something cool." Karine took the phone back. "We're fine here. Don't rush." She hung up without saying goodbye. Dawn broke clear and cold. Miguel picked me up at 4:30 a.m., and we drove to the park in silence. 2 plainclothes officers were already there, setting up. "Ready?" Miguel asked as we approached the bench. I nodded, though ready wasn't the right word. How could anyone be ready to stage their own murder? They worked efficiently, marking the spot, applying the synthetic blood in a spray pattern consistent with an attack. My running shoes left appropriate tracks. My wallet, phone, and keys were arranged just so. "Now these," a technician said, handing me a shirt to put on. "We need authentic sweat patterns." I changed, ran a short distance, then returned to have the shirt deliberately torn and bloodied. By 6:15, the scene was set. Photos were taken from every angle. "Now we wait," Miguel said, leading me to an unmarked van parked several blocks away. Hours crawled by. At 7:30 that evening, Miguel made the call from an untraceable phone. I sat beside him in the surveillance van, headphones on, heart thundering. "It's done," Miguel said into the phone. Simple, direct. There was a pause, then Karine's voice, the same voice that had once whispered she loved me, answered with a single word. "Good." I buried my face in my hands. Miguel ended the call and put a steady hand on my shoulder. We sat in silence for several minutes before his phone buzzed with a text. "She just withdrew $5,000 from your joint account at the ATM on Westbrook Drive," he said, showing me the surveillance image. "The remaining balance." The photo showed Karine in sunglasses and a baseball cap, but I'd recognize the set of her shoulders anywhere. She looked relieved. Miguel pocketed his phone. "She's biting the hook." 3 days in Nate's apartment felt like 3 years. The walls closed in with every hour that passed, and I paced the living room floor so much that Nate joked I was going to wear a path in his carpet. "You're giving me anxiety just watching you," Nate said, tossing me a beer from the fridge. "Sit down before you collapse." I caught it but set it on the coffee table untouched. "Can't drink. Need to stay sharp." "Aaron, buddy, you haven't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since you got here." "Sharp went out the window yesterday." He wasn't wrong. I'd been living on coffee and takeout containers that piled up beside Nate's trash can. Chinese food boxes, pizza crusts, and sandwich wrappers from the deli down the street. We'd run out of clean forks 2 days ago. "You heard from Ariane?" Nate asked, dropping into his recliner. "Karine won't let me talk to her." I picked at the label on the beer bottle. "Says she's sleeping or doing homework or at a friend's house every time." I'd spent most of yesterday recording voice messages for Ariane on my phone, just in case something went wrong. Just in case Karine somehow slipped through the net. Just in case I never got to tell my daughter all the things a father should. "Hey, Ariane Bear. Remember when you were 5 and afraid of thunderstorms? Remember how we built that blanket fort in the living room and I told you Thor was just bowling up in the clouds? I want you to be brave like that now." I recorded 17 messages before I broke down. On the morning of the 4th day, my burner phone rang. Miguel's voice came through, clipped and professional. "She's making her move. Just scheduled an appointment with the insurance agent, Mr. Halverson at Midwest Life and Home, 11 o'clock. We'll pick you up in 20. I showered quickly, borrowing Nate's razor to clean up my stubble. Looking presentable seemed important somehow, even though Karine wouldn't see me. Not yet. "You need backup?" Nate asked as I headed for the door. I shook my head. Just need this to be over. The unmarked car idled at the curb, Miguel in the passenger seat, another officer driving. I slid into the back and we pulled away from Nate's apartment complex. "How you holding up?" Miguel asked, passing me a coffee in a paper cup. "I'm fine," I lied, accepting it gratefully. "She believes you're dead." The lab processed the evidence from the park. Report says male victim matching your description, multiple stab wounds. Body transported to county morgue. Official ID pending next of kin notification. We parked across from the insurance office, a tan brick building with a blue awning. Detective Ortiz pointed to a second-story window. Observation room. One-way glass. We'll be able to see and hear everything. Inside, 2 more officers were already setting up recording equipment. A monitor showed the agent's office, Mr. Halverson arranging papers at his desk, checking his watch. At 10:55 she arrived. Karine stepped from her Lexus wearing a black dress and jacket, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. She carried a slim leather folio with colored tabs sticking out the sides, organized to the end. My stomach twisted. I remembered when she'd worn that exact outfit to her grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. The sunglasses were new. Through the one-way glass, I watched her enter Halverson's office. She removed the sunglasses with a trembling hand, revealing expertly reddened eyes. Perfect morning makeup. No smudges. "Mrs. Simpsons, please have a seat." Halverson stood, offering his hand. "My deepest condolences for your loss." Karin dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Thank you. It's been unbearable." She opened the folio and began passing documents across the desk. "I've brought everything. The policy number, Aaron's death certificate, police report. The officer said you'd need all of this." Mr. Halverson nodded sympathetically, reviewing each page. "Yes, this all appears to be in order. I understand how difficult this must be. We have 3 timestamps marked," one of the techs murmured to Miguel. "Insurance fraud, now obstruction and falsification of records." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white as I watched the performance. 12 years together, and I'd never known she could lie so convincingly. How many other performances had I applauded without knowing the script? 40 minutes later, Karine emerged from the building, slipping her sunglasses back on. She sat in her car for a moment, then pulled out her phone. Miguel's phone buzzed. He put it on speaker. "It's done," Karine said without preamble. "The insurance agent bought everything. I need to finalize our arrangement. Motel 6 on Highway 29 tomorrow, 8 p.m. "I'll be there," Miguel replied in his Hitman voice. "Bring the rest of what I owe you and then we never speak again." She hung up. Miguel pocketed his phone. "Tomorrow ends it." I stared out the window as night began to settle over the city, streetlights flickering on one by one. Everything looked different now. Sharper. Colder. "Let it be over soon," I whispered. The next evening felt like the longest of my life. I sat in the surveillance van, knees bouncing as Miguel went through final checks with the tactical team. 6 officers in total, positioned around the Motel 6 like chess pieces. 2 in a room next door, 1 in the parking lot disguised as a maintenance worker, 2 more in cars facing different exits. "You sure you want to be here for this?" Miguel asked, adjusting his wire for the 4th time. "I need to see her face," I said. "I need to know it's real." The motel was just off Highway 29, a 1-story stretch of faded blue doors and flickering exterior lights. Room 112 had been rented under the department's alias. Miguel, now fully in character as Mark, would meet Karina there at 8 p.m. sharp. "Remember," the tactical lead said, "we move on the signal, not before." Miguel nodded, tugging his left sleeve. The signal. At 7:52 p.m., the radio crackled. "Target vehicle approaching from the east entrance." I leaned forward, peering through the van's tinted window. Karen's Lexus pulled into a spot 3 doors down from room 112. She sat there for almost a full minute, checking her makeup in the mirror. Even now, appearances mattered. "Jesus," I whispered. "She's actually dressed up for this." The officer beside me said nothing, just adjusted the audio levels on the receiver. Karen stepped out wearing a sleek black pantsuit, the one she'd bought for networking events. Her hair was pulled back, not a strand out of place. She carried a small black purse and what looked like a manila envelope. Business casual for murder. I used to love watching her get ready for important meetings. The precise way she'd apply mascara, the little smile she'd give her reflection. Now all I saw was calculation. "Audio check." Miguel's voice came through the speakers. "Clear," the tech responded. Karine knocked 3 times. Miguel opened the door, ushering her inside. The surveillance camera mounted in the smoke detector gave us a perfect view of the room. 2 beds, a desk, generic hotel art on the walls. "You're prompt," Miguel said, still in character. "I appreciate that in a client." "Let's not draw this out," Karine replied, setting her purse on the desk. "I have what we agreed on." She removed the envelope from her purse and slid it across to him. 20,000 as promised. The rest of your fee. Miguel counted it slowly, methodically. Karine watched with the same expression she used when reviewing contractor estimates, slightly impatient, wholly in control. "Police confirmed it was him?" she asked. "No mistakes?" "No mistakes," Miguel said. "Aaron Simpsons is officially deceased." She nodded once, satisfied. "And the scene? It looked like a robbery gone bad. Random, tragic, nothing pointing to you." A small smile touched her lips. "Good. Very good." My stomach clenched. That smile, I'd seen it on our wedding day, when Ariane was born, when we closed on our house. Now it appeared for my death. "So," Miguel said, slipping the money into his jacket, "our business is concluded." "Yes. And we never saw each other." Karine reached for her purse. "The life insurance pays out in 30 days. I'm thinking of moving south, starting over." That's when Miguel tugged his sleeve. "Freeze! Police! Hands where we can see them!" The door burst open. Officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Karine's eyes went wide, her mouth opening in shock as she was pushed against the wall. The cuffs clicked around her wrists with metallic finality. What is this?" she stammered. "There's been a mistake." "Karine Simpsons," the lead officer recited. "You're under arrest for solicitation of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud." "No," she kept saying. "No, no, no. You don't understand." That's when I stepped through the door. Our eyes met. For one heartbeat, her face registered pure disbelief, like she was seeing a ghost. Then her expression hardened into something cold and furious. "You," she spat. "You set me up." I stood there, hands in my pockets to keep them from shaking. 12 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. "You set yourself up," I said quietly. Camera flashes pulsed as evidence text documented the scene. The money on the bed. The envelope with my name written in her handwriting. Karina's face twisted with rage as they let her out. Hours later, we sat in the fluorescent glare of the police station. Miguel handed me a styrofoam cup of coffee. "You did good," he said. "One of the cleanest stings I've seen in years. She never suspected a thing." I nodded, too drained to speak. "We'll need you for some follow-up statements tomorrow, but you're free to go for now. Get some sleep." Sleep seemed impossible. The image of Karan's face when she saw me alive kept replaying in my mind. The drive back to Nate's apartment felt surreal. Streetlights flashed across the windshield in steady rhythm. Left, right, light, dark. Before, after. She wanted me gone. I whispered to the empty car. Now she's the one who's finished. A week after the arrest, my life went from private nightmare to public spectacle. The Millside Tribune ran the story on page 3. Local woman arrested in murder-for-hire plot. They used our wedding photo, the one where Karine's smile reached her eyes and my hand rested on her shoulder, both of us leaning into each other like trees that had grown together. I folded the newspaper and tossed it in the recycling bin at Nate's place. Didn't need to keep that memory. The calls started around noon. First my sister, then my boss asking if I needed more time off, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be a reporter. I stopped answering after that one. At 3:30, my phone lit up with my mother's face. "Aaron," she said, her voice thin and wavering. "Diana just called us." My stomach dropped. Karine's mother. Of course she'd reach out. What did she say? I kept my voice even, though my grip tightened on the phone. She said you made everything up. That you've been trying to get sole custody of Ariane for months, that you staged the whole thing because you were jealous of Karine's success. I closed my eyes. I should have expected this. Diana had always seen her daughter as flawless. "There's more," Mom continued, her voice breaking. "She said Karine was just pretending to go along with it because she was afraid of you." The silence afterward told me everything. The seed of doubt was planted. "Do you want to come over?" I asked. "I can show you what really happened." 2 hours later, my parents sat at Nate's kitchen table. Dad hadn't spoken a word yet, just studied me with eyes that looked older than they had a month ago. Mom kept folding and unfolding a tissue. I set my laptop on the table and pulled up the audio files Miguel had cleared for family disclosure. "This is Karine," I said, talking to Detective Ortiz when she thought he was a hitman. I hit play. Karine's voice filled the kitchen, smooth, controlled, discussing my death like a business transaction. "The insurance is $750,000. I just need a clean job, something that looks like a mugging gone wrong." Miguel's voice. "And you're sure about this, Mrs. Simpsons?" "I've been sure for months." I stopped the recording. Mom's hand covered her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Dad's jaw muscles worked beneath his skin. "There's more," I said quietly. "But I think you get the idea." Dad finally spoke. "Diana said you were abusive, that you pushed Karine into this." I nodded slowly. I figured she'd say something like that. I pulled out the second recording, the night I confronted Karine about knowing. Her cold laugh when she called me dramatic. Her taunt that no one would believe me. When it ended, Dad reached across the table and put his hand on my arm. A gesture so simple, but one he hadn't made since I was a teenager. "All right," he said softly. "We stand with you." Mom wiped her eyes. "What about Ariane? Does she know?" "Not everything. Just that her mom did something very wrong and has to be away for a while." I swallowed hard. I visited her at school yesterday. Supervised visit, part of the temporary custody arrangement. The memory of Ariane running to me in the school counselor's office, her small arms tight around my neck, brought the sting of tears. I'd promised her I was safe, that I wasn't going anywhere. Her whispered, "I missed you, Daddy," nearly broke me. Later that night, after my parents left, Nate helped me gather financial documents for the upcoming hearing. We spread papers across his dining room table. Bank statements, credit card bills, insurance policies. "Look at this," Nate said, pointing to a credit withdrawal from 3 months earlier. 20 grand right before she started meeting with Miguel. "The down payment," I murmured. We worked until after 11, organizing everything into labeled folders. Nate finally called it a night, heading to bed with a supportive clap on my shoulder. I couldn't sleep. At midnight, I was still at the table, reviewing old statements. In a folder of house documents, I found an envelope I hadn't opened, some paperwork Karine had filed away weeks ago. Inside was a refinancing application and a handwritten note on our monogrammed stationery. "When this is over, everything will be ours." My blood went cold. Not mine. Ours. Who was the other half of that ours? I looked up from the note to the faint reflection of myself in the dark window. The ghostly image stared back, hollow-eyed and bewildered. She thought I'd never see this side of her. The courthouse loomed like a fortress in the morning light. Courthouse security was doubled, standard procedure for high-profile murder conspiracy cases. I smoothed my tie for the third time as Miguel briefed me outside. "Just tell the truth exactly as it happened," he said. "Don't embellish, don't downplay." I nodded, trying to swallow past the dryness in my throat. "What if she—" "Karine will try to manipulate you with her eyes. Don't look at her any more than necessary." Inside, the courtroom's polished wood and formal atmosphere made everything feel surreal. Reporters filled the back row, pencils poised. I spotted my parents and Nate sitting together on the right. Then the side door opened and Karine walked in. She wore a modest navy dress, the same one she'd worn to my cousin's funeral 2 years back. Her hair was pulled into a simple bun, and she wore minimal makeup. The perfect picture of a wrongfully accused woman. Our eyes met for a split second before I looked away, my pulse hammering in my ears. When they called me to the stand, I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, Ms. Reeves, approached with a gentle smile. "Mr. Simpsons, please tell the court about the night you received the first call from Detective Ortiz." I cleared my throat and began. It was 12:17 a.m. on a Thursday. I remember checking the time because I couldn't sleep. I'd been worried about missing money from our accounts. I described everything. The blocked number, Miguel's careful explanation, the meeting behind the feed store, the evidence folder with my daily routine mapped out in Karina's handwriting. I explained our plan to stage my death, the photos, the fake blood. The courtroom was utterly silent. And when Detective Ortiz called your wife to tell her the hit was complete, what was her response? Ms. Reeves asked. She said, "Good." My voice wavered. Just that one word, like she'd been told dinner was ready. Throughout my testimony, I kept my focus on the prosecutor, the judge, the back wall, anywhere but Karine. Still, I caught glimpses of her from the corner of my eye, her expression cycling between cold fury and complete disinterest, as if we were discussing someone else's life entirely. When Mr. Halverson took the stand, he nervously adjusted his glasses before confirming that Karine had indeed filed the claim within days of my supposed death, presenting all the necessary documentation with remarkable efficiency. She seemed very prepared, he said. Most people in grief struggle with paperwork. Mrs. Simpson's had everything organized by category. Miguel was the final prosecution witness. He spoke with the calm authority of someone who'd done this many times before, detailing the department's protocol for murder-for-hire investigations. When the prosecutor played the final recording, Karine's voice confirming payment for the completed job, I closed my eyes. I'm glad it's over. Her voice filled the courtroom. Now I can start fresh. Karine's defense attorney objected repeatedly, claiming entrapment, questioning chain of custody, suggesting the recordings could have been manipulated. Each objection was overruled. The evidence was simply too solid, too consistent, too complete. During closing arguments, Ms. Reeves stood before the jury box, her voice firm. This isn't a crime of passion or a momentary lapse in judgment. This is methodical planning to end a human life for financial gain. Mrs. Simpson's didn't just wish her husband harm. She budgeted for it, scheduled it, and celebrated its completion. The defense offered weak counter-arguments about marital stress and my alleged controlling behavior, but even I could see the jury wasn't buying it. When they left to deliberate, Miguel squeezed my shoulder. Should be straightforward, he murmured. But juries can be unpredictable. 4 hours felt like 40. I paced the hallway, checking my phone obsessively for messages from Ariane's temporary guardian. Finally, the bailiff called us back in. The foreman stood, paper in hand. The courtroom held a collective breath. On the count of solicitation to commit first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. My exhale was audible. On the count of attempted insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. I didn't look at Karine, but I felt her eyes burning into me. The judge's sentencing came swiftly. 12 years for the solicitation charge, 5 for the fraud, to be served consecutively. As the bailiff approached Karina, she finally broke her composed facade, hissing something I couldn't hear as they led her away. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions I had no interest in answering. Miguel shook my hand firmly. It's over, he said. You can start rebuilding now. That evening, I sat on my couch, back in my own home for the first time in weeks, next to Ariane's purple backpack. The house felt both familiar and foreign, like returning to a childhood bedroom as an adult. Everything was the same, yet nothing was. It's finally done, I whispered to the empty room. But something still didn't feel right. This house, these walls, they knew too much, held too many lies. I opened my laptop and navigated to a rental website, scrolling through properties in towns at least 50 miles away. Somewhere Karine wouldn't expect. Somewhere we could truly start over. 2 months after the trial, I signed the final divorce papers with a hand that no longer trembled. The courtroom was nearly empty this time, just me, my lawyer, and a court clerk who'd seen 1,000 broken marriages before mine. No cameras, no reporters, no Karine in handcuffs glaring across the room. The judge granted me full custody of Ariane with a simple nod and stamp. Supervised visitation can be arranged if requested by the minor, he said, shuffling papers. She hasn't asked, I replied. The judge's eyes softened slightly. He understood. Outside, the spring air felt different, cleaner somehow. I checked my phone and found 3 missed calls from Diana. I deleted them without listening to the messages, just like I'd done with the dozen before. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some need to stay burned. That weekend, Nate's pickup truck sat in my driveway, packed with moving boxes. He'd shown up at dawn with coffee and donuts, insisting on helping. "You sure about this, man?" he asked, taping shut another box of kitchen items. "Moving without telling anyone where?" I nodded, wrapping Ariane's science fair trophy in newspaper. "It's not forever. Just until things settle. Your parents are pretty upset about it." I paused, remembering my mother's tears when I told her I wouldn't be giving her my new address. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. But they also understand why, after everything that happened." I carefully placed the wrapped trophy in a box marked Ariane, special. One leak, one slip to the wrong person, and Karine could find ways to reach us even from prison. Nate didn't argue. He'd been there through enough of the nightmare to understand. The next morning, Miguel met us at the county clerk's office, guiding me through the paperwork for a restricted address order. His badge opened doors that would have otherwise remained closed. "The prison system is notifying you that she's been transferred to Millbrook State," he said, sliding a formal letter across the desk. "Standard procedure." I barely glanced at it. "Good. That's 3 hours from where we're going." Miguel nodded, his expression serious. "Aaron, I want you to know, what you're doing isn't paranoid. It's smart. People like Karine, they don't let go easily. I remember when we used to drive past Millbrook on family trips. Ariane would point at the distant gray buildings and ask what they were. Karine would squeeze her hand and say, 'That's where bad people go to think about what they've done.' The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 days later, Ariane and I stood in the driveway of a small blue house on Cypress Lane, in a town whose name rarely appeared on state maps. The mortgage was modest, the neighbors distant enough for privacy. A wooded trail stretched behind the property, where pine trees filtered morning light into scattered gold coins on the forest floor. "Do you think my new teacher will know about what happened?" Ariane asked, clutching her backpack as we walked up the porch steps. I knelt beside her at eye level. "No, honey. Nobody here knows our story unless we choose to tell them." I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "This is our fresh start." That evening I assembled her new desk while she sorted rocks she'd found along the trail. The kitchen table became command central for her latest science project, something about different soil types and seed germination. I watched her carefully label each jar, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. For the first time in months, I exhaled completely. Seasons changed, leaves fell, snow came and went. We developed new routines: Saturday morning pancakes, Wednesday night board games. I found work at a local commercial HVAC company where nobody asked questions about my past. 6 months after our move, Miguel drove up for coffee. We sat on my back deck watching Ariane identify birds with her new binoculars. "She sent 3 letters to your old address," he said quietly. "Karine, the prison forwarding system keeps bouncing them back." I sipped my coffee, feeling nothing but a distant echo where pain used to live. "I don't care about reading either," I told him. "Whatever she wants to say, apology, excuse, more manipulation, it doesn't matter anymore." Miguel nodded. "You've built something good here." That afternoon after he left, I went running along the trail that had become my new thinking space. I reached a weathered park bench overlooking a small pond, where I now stopped regularly to catch my breath and watch the sun play across the water. I paused, inhaling the scent of pine and possibilities. "She tried to end my life," I murmured to the reflection in the still water, "but all she did was give me a new one." I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.